All right, today I'm going to be talking about 10 business mistakes that broke me, literally, right? Through a lot of these mistakes, I almost went bankrupt. Luckily, I made it out. I'm here today still. Yay, I'm still an entrepreneur. Nonetheless, I'm going to share the mistakes with you. More importantly, I'm going to actually cover what I learned from it and hopefully what you can learn from it, because the biggest thing that I've learned over the last 11 years being an entrepreneur, and I kid you not, I probably made more mistakes than anyone else, but the thing I learned from those mistakes is the best way to succeed is to continue pushing forward as an entrepreneur and learn from your mistakes, and more importantly, learn from other people's mistakes. As long as you don't continually repeat the same mistakes over and over again, you're going to increase your odds of succeeding. So let's get started. All right, number one, do you have the right business partner? How many people in here have a business partner? Not too many of you guys. All right, so the thing with entrepreneurship is when you're starting out a company, you barely have money, right? So it's like you can't go out there and get everything that you need to get done because it costs money to get a lot of things done. So what's one quick and easy way to get more things done? You get a business partner. And hopefully that business partner picks up the slack, they carry their weight, and they do a lot of the stuff you can't. When I first started out, right, and I keep in mind I started when I was 16, here's how I used to pick a business partner. One, were they my friend? If I knew them for a few years and they were a friend, like in high school, I was like, oh, this person's awesome. I had a fun time with them. Two, Ivy League schools. For some odd reason, when I was a little kid, I was impressed with people who graduated from Harvard or Stanford. I'm not saying they're bad colleges, they're actually great. But if you approach me to be a business partner and you graduated from Harvard, I'm like, oh, this dude must be really smart, this chick must be really smart. I'm gonna have them as my business partner because they're well connected, they went to Harvard, and they're gonna make me millions of bucks because they got to network with rich white people, right? Something that I never networked myself with when I was that young. The third thing was, were they cool? If they partied and they had a good time all the time, I was like, yeah, I want to be business partners with that person because I know how to have fun. Well, the reality is just because they're cool doesn't mean they're going to make you money. And the last one, which was really silly, was would they fall in line? I didn't want a business partner that would state their own opinions, argue with me, so forth, so on. I just wanted someone who'd be like, yeah, Neil, you're right, let's just do it, right? And I was like, oh, cool, that'll make life really easy, right? That's how I picked business partners. Now, I picked one of these partners. They met a lot of these criteria. They were a friend, they graduated from an Ivy League school, they were cool. They did not fall in line, but they were the first three. And here's the story. So I own a software company called CrazyEgg. And I've owned it for like 7 years. I met some guy through one of my other business partners, and he's like, yeah, this guy's awesome, we should make him a business partner. We gave him 10% of the company. When the company wasn't making money, no issues. But sooner or later, the company started growing, we were producing cash, we had good returns on our money, right? And once it started producing that cash, the guy's like, hey, you're mismanaging the funds. You're stealing from the company. Now keep in mind, anytime someone tells you a story, there's always two sides to the story. I could be right or I could be wrong. Yet that's your guess out there. But right when he made the accusation and we got a lawyer from a letter, I was like, what the hell, right? So he was saying like we were laundering money and all this. So I just gave him all the bank statements. And I was like, show me where I'm funneling the money. Right? It was clear cut in my opinion, in his opinion it wasn't. We went to mediation. Long story short, I would not pay him any fees or anything like that because he thought I funneled the money. I didn't. Instead, I just bought out his shares. And it was a long process, cost me a lot of money, cost me 6 figures, well into the 6 figures, plus legal fees. Luckily though, because I was pretty stern on my negotiation, I made 4x the money on the shares. The day I signed the paper in the court or in the mediation, I came up 4x on whatever I paid him. And if you fast forward today, I think I've up like 12 or 13x or something like that. So it wasn't bad, but I would have saved myself the hassle if I picked my business partners right in the first place. So when you're going out there and you're getting a business partner for your venture, current venture, a new one, whatever it may be, there's one thing to keep in mind. I personally am not married, but I would actually say getting in business or bed with a business partner is much worse than getting married, because it's a lot tougher to get out, right? You get divorced, I think you cut half the money, I don't know yet, but hopefully that never happens to me. Nonetheless, in business, it doesn't work like that. It's very messy. Someone, if they own 50% and you own 50%, they could pull in a different direction than you, so forth and so on. They may not want to sell the shares to you. You may not want to sell to them. It's a really sticky situation of trying to get out of a business partnership. So one, be really picky on who you get in bed with, right? Like, know them for years, know how they work with them first, even if you know them, before you actually let them be your business partner. Two, have really good contracts. And I'm talking about like contracts without clauses in case it doesn't work out. You also, most importantly, want to vest shares. So if you've been in a business for a while and you're bringing someone in, their shares should vest over a 4-year period. So if it doesn't work out, you can cut them off. Whatever shares they have, they get to keep. Whatever they haven't invested, they don't. You also have to pick opposites. If you're a business guy, probably want to pick a developer. You shouldn't pick another business guy, right? If you're a developer, you could pick a marketer, business guy, whatever, designer, but don't pick another developer. So pick opposites, because when you're strapped for cash, you want someone who can do the work that you can't. You don't want to have to go out there and pay people when you don't have any money. And last but not least, you want to make sure they're financially stable. I kid you not. Out of all the business partnerships I've had, one of the biggest reasons we've had problems is they didn't necessarily have money, they couldn't pay their bills, so it puts strain on the business, right? Because even if you want to keep personal life and business separate, it's still going to commingle, especially when they're worried about having that roof over their head and they have kids and a wife or whatever it may be. So make sure they're financially stable enough where if something goes wrong, they can take care of it and not have to put that additional stress onto you. And it's actually really good if they have a good relationship with their parents, because hopefully they can move back with their mom and dad if something really goes wrong. So I live with my mom, dad, 23, best thing ever. I regret not living with them still. All that laundry being done, that food being cooked for you. My mom still calls me back, Neil, come home, I'll make you breakfast every day. So I'm actually going back tomorrow morning, yeah. So number 2. Time isn't on your side. You need to execute, and you need to execute as fast as possible. Because the thing at the end of the day is, whether you feel you have competitors or not, sooner or later you're going to have someone, and if you can't move fast enough, someone's going to beat you to the punch. So make sure whatever you're doing, you get something out within a month or 2. If it takes you longer than that, you're taking way too long. I created this company called Surf. And it was in Rockwell, Texas, right by Dallas. And I had this brilliant idea. Any of you guys heard of the Media Temple grid server solution? That was my idea a year or 2 before it came out. And I spent $1 million on it, trying to actually do that idea before Media Temple. The funny thing is I didn't have $1 million, so I actually had to borrow $1 million. And I spent it on business partners who moved really slow and really weren't the best at what they did. Within 12 months, we launched nothing. They also had some of the problems in my previous slide, right? Like financial instability, and they had a family and kids of, I think, like 6. So I even bought them a home in Rockwell, Texas that cost $200 and something thousand. Why did I buy it instead of renting it? I have no clue. I was stupid and young. But nonetheless, I lost over $1 million on that, of borrowed money. Not investor money, but borrowed money that I had to pay back. And it failed miserably because we never launched anything. If you can't launch something, someone like Media Temple is going to beat you to the punch, get a ton of customers, and make a lot of money. So lessons I learned from that: set deadlines. No matter what, you have to set deadlines. People have to be held accountable to them as well, right? You can't just set a deadline, it passes, nothing happens. Someone better be meeting them. If not, something has to change. You also need to make sure they're small. If the milestones, goals are too big for those deadlines, they're not going to get met. So make them really small and tangible. That way you can see it really well in advance if they're actually going to be met or not. And last but not least, don't worry about perfection. A lot of people are like, dude, I'm going to create the most perfect version of whatever it may be. That software has a lot of bugs. Mine's going to be perfect. Perfection is overrated. Nothing's ever perfect. You're going to continue to have to iterate, so forth, so on. It's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be issues. Just get it out there and start trying to make money. Number 3, focus, focus, focus. You heard the saying, us Generation Y kids have ADD, right? That's what we all say. Well, if you have ADD, you got to figure out how to focus. And here's the thing. There isn't enough time in the day to do multiple things. Think of it this way. I'm a single guy. I'm 27 now. And if you think about it, there's only 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. Let's say you sleep. I need my 8 hours of sleep or I'm cranky. It's like, you hang out with family, whatever maybe. You don't really have more than 70 to 80 hours to work every single week. If you barely have money and there's not enough time in the day to work, right, to get everything done that needs to be done, how can you do multiple businesses and do 2 businesses at the same time? It's just not going to work. Unless you're Elon Musk, and I got to say that guy's a badass, right? Like when people ask him, what do? He can say, oh, one of my companies competes with Toyota. What's the other one do? I compete with NASA, right? Like he's a badass, and he's the CEO of both of them. And they're billion-dollar companies. Unless you're Elon Musk, don't try to do 2 companies at once, right? He put in, when people wouldn't give him money, in one interview he's like, no one give me money. I just put in $100 million in my own money, right? Like the guy's really a badass. And probably none of us in this room are him. So don't try to do 2 businesses at once. Focus. So when I was running an internet marketing agency, and as you can see, you see all these themes, First one was an analytics company called CrazyEgg, then a hosting company, then an internet marketing company. I have focus problems myself. When I was running a marketing agency, this was one of my first businesses, I tried doing way too many things at once. I wanted to create software and be cool because I was reading on TechCrunch all these sites and then companies and be like, ooh, we released blah, blah. I'm like, oh, wow, I want to be one of those companies, right? I want to be like this one time on TechCrunch, and I can talk about how my company was on there. So I tried doing way too many things. I tried creating a PPC software company. I tried creating an analytics company. I even tried getting into the Facebook development business. And last but not least, I also created a web design company, all under that agency umbrella. Terrible idea. What ended up happening? We lost focus of what was really bringing us in the revenue, right? So in the long run, revenue is going to decline from that. We also neglected sales channels. Instead of continually going to conferences, speaking about internet marketing, getting new customers, and blogging, and doing PR and all those kind of things to generate more demand, instead I was focusing on creating the next best PPC software that never launched. So lessons learned, have laser focus until your revenue flattens or starts slowing down. And I actually learned this one from a smart guy. His name was Brian Lee. Have any of you guys heard of LegalZoom? He had this idea with LegalZoom. He wanted to create a box that he sends to your house that solves all of your legal issues in one little box. Never worked. He went back, focused on his core thing, setting up LLCs and corporations, stuff like that. Business took off, did extremely well. Right now he was also the founder of Shoe Dazzle, and I think some other one with some other celebrity. But that's his model, start businesses with celebrities. So have laser focus. When it starts flattening, then start expanding. Focus on improving instead of expanding first. You'll be shocked on what you can do with your current business, right? There's a lot of improvements and small tweaks that you can make that can continually boost revenue. Double down on your core business. Try to get more of that slice of the pie, right? The bigger of the slice you can get, the more you'll be worth. And last but not least, continue to innovate. But when you're innovating, innovate on your core business. Don't try to keep on innovating on new stuff. If your core business is making you money, try to make that better. Don't necessarily try to create new products out there. If you focus, you'll be much more likely to succeed. That's one of the biggest mistakes I've made. It took me around 6 years before I was able to focus. Number 4, build for your customers. This sounds like an obvious one, right? I'm in the software space, I have an analyst company, you'd think I would know that. So check this out. When I first started building software, I built stuff for myself. And keep this in mind, you don't pay yourself. Customers pay you. So if you build stuff for yourself, your income is going to pretty much be however much money you have in your bank account. So start building stuff for your customers. Here's a Kissmetrics story. 4 years ago, which is roughly when you started, maybe a bit more than that now. I think we're at 4.5. We took $1 million in seed funding from some angel investors. We created a version with that. It was called version 1.0. We were going to create a better Google Analytics, right? Everyone uses Google Analytics here? Probably have some issues with Google Analytics, right? Like, yeah, it could be better. Well, we were going to create a better version of it, and we were going to charge you for it. What was the issue? No one wanted it because they loved how Google Analytics was free. But I built it because I wanted it. Terrible idea, right? Spent a year on that. Version 2, and at this point we were running out of money, so we had to raise another round. We raised $3 million. Version 2 only took 6 months this time, didn't take a year. We created a Facebook analytics company off of Dave McClure's R metrics, you know, like the pirate AARR or something like that. That didn't work out as well. We found out these Facebook gaming companies actually don't make that much money or have a ton of money to spend on games. Don't believe me? Look at Zynga's stock, right? It's in the shitter. So it really is. These games last for like 6 months and then they go down. But that's who I was trying to build a product for. Learned the hard way that they have a ton of data, which is costly to compute, and they don't want to spend much money at all. Version 3 took less than 30 days to launch. Funny enough, that was the version that we actually currently have. We've iterated on it, but it's the version that people continually pay for and the business is thriving, right? Lessons learned from this: create a minimal viable product. It's Eric Ries's, you know, like preaching his whole thing, MVP, Lean Startup, great book. Funny enough, he's been an advisor to our company from day one, but it took us like 1.5 years to get there. I don't know why, but you know, we learned the hard way. As you can see, I'm on the business side, not the engineering side. And my co-founder is also a business guy. So, but it's worked out. So when you release a product and you do a minimal viable product, what that is you get something out there as quick as possible and you get feedback. For example, when we want to launch a new feature report, we actually survey people and just get their input, and then we'll go create wireframes and designs that are clickable. We won't even develop it and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And we'll put fake data in there, and people are like, oh, cool, I like this, or I want to see this, or I wish I could do that, blah, blah, blah. We keep on iterating, and eventually we'll create a version that actually works and let people test it out with their data and iterate more until we get product market fit, which means that people are saying, I'm really satisfied with your product, and I'd be devastated if it no longer existed, which means that they'll talk about your product a lot, the word of mouth marketing will spread, they'll be willing to pay a lot more, churn will decrease, stuff like that, right? So go for product market fit. You can Google it to look at the product market fit pyramid and how that works. And again, don't worry about perfection when you're doing all of this kind of stuff. It just helps you get out products much faster. Number 5, emotions and business don't mix. And this one I did a lot when I was a little kid because I started when I was 16, so I was very emotional versus logical, right? When you're in business, you can't make decisions based off what you feel. You got to make decisions based off your bank account. And I know there are a lot of other factors, but businesses are evaluated by their financial prosperity, right? Don't believe me? Look at the NASDAQ or the stock exchange. It'll show you. So there was this mystery company. I didn't want to put their name in there. They're really generous to me. I felt that they screwed me over at first. I was advised to a company, got very little shares. Those shares, you know, if they sold today, would probably only worth like 30 grand. And within the first 60 days, I made them $200,000 in revenue. So I was like, dude, I'm hooking this company up with my connections, making them money. That 200 grand probably made them around like 70, 80 in profit. And then they let me go really quickly. My shares didn't vest because there was a 1-year cliff, which means any shares, you know, I would get no shares in the first year because they cut me off before a year ended. And I was like, screw these guys. I wanted to do a blog post on them. I thought I was top of the world. I was a power user on Dig. I'm like, I'm gonna crush you. And like, I was getting really into it. And then like a month later, they introduced me to a company that paid me 500 grand. I was like, oh, I love you guys, you know. I'm happy I didn't bash you online. So what did I learn from that? Don't get mad. If someone burns you, you don't need to go public with it. Keep it on the inside, right? You don't need no therapy. Go talk to your mom if you want some therapy. Go out there, be nice. You never know when they're gonna come back and spend money with you again or like refer stuff. And you don't want them being able to badmouth you. Lessons learned, never burn bridges, right? There are also 2 sides to the story. they cut me because they're like, hey, Neil may have made us 200 grand, but we don't think he can make us any more in the next year or two. That was their reason for cutting me when I asked them. And the other thing is, most importantly, don't make rash decisions. Sit on it for a day or two. If that's not enough, wait a week, 2 weeks, month, right? No need to make rash decisions. And funny enough, when you wait on it and people screw you over, they get really nervous, like, wait, what is this guy doing, right? Makes them get on a bit edgy, which is kind of nice. So number 6, only hire loyal employees. Learned this one the hard way. So loyalty matters. Hiring good employees isn't enough. You need to hire loyal employees because shit happens. That's just not in your control, right? I was part of this company called Frugality. I put in 100 grand, me and my co-founder. And this dude came up to us with the idea. We set up a business. We barely did any work. We just put in more of the capital. It was when podcasting was hot. Everyone remember podcasting? That thing that no one listens to anymore? So when podcasting was hot and you just had the iPod without the video, right? We created this company kind of like Google AdWords, but for podcasts because it's taking off. We could automatically take your podcast that you were creating and put in ads for you and do an on-demand pay-per-listen model. And it was hot, right? A lot of companies were hitting us up, ad agencies. We even had a lot of buyout offers. And it didn't go through. And the reason the buyout offer didn't go through, and it was from a big search giant, you can take a guess, there's only 3. But the reason it didn't go through because he was like, dude, why would I want to work for him? That would be stupid. I like doing my own little business. And I'm like, dude, I just gave you 100 grand for this business and you're telling me you're not passionate about it and you don't want to do it full time or you don't care for it? I'm like, why'd I give you the 100 grand for it, right? So I learned that it's really important to have passionate people. Like the other thing to keep in mind is I've also been through lawsuits, class action lawsuits. When you don't have loyal people that don't fit in with your culture, they're going to leave you. During my last class action lawsuit, my last and hopefully only one, we actually had no employees who left us, which is pretty amazing, right? You're running out of capital, customers were leaving us, and the class action lasted a long time, like over a year, and no one left us. And it was because they really fit in with culture. We took care of them. Me and my co-founders do whatever we can for our team members, right? Because it's like they're a family. So it's like when you treat them that way, they're going to treat you that way, and it's a win-win situation. So lessons learned, hire people who fit within your culture. Tony Hsieh does a great job of this. When you're interviewing, he'll pay you to quit right away. And if you want to quit and take the money, you can take the money, but he knows that you're a bad fit. Make sure everyone has similar short-term and long-term models. People try to buy you out. If everyone on the team doesn't have that same goal and objective, a lot of your team members won't go, which means that your company's not going to be valued the same. You also need to be transparent. I've always been open with my team, and by being transparent, it's helped create a good culture and a healthy one where they stick with me and I continually stick with them. Number 7, don't be too greedy. As a brown person, I was taught to be really greedy at a young age. And I can tell you, I did whatever I could to keep all those nickels to myself. Like I would even go throughout my house and steal my parents' quarters and stuff and like collect them and turn it in and keep the cash. Like I count my pennies, right? Actually, funny enough, on a side topic, my sister, who married my business partner, has a 2-year-old nephew or a 2-year-old kid. And my sister was, asked him the other day in bed, who do you love more, mommy or daddy? And he's like, I love Neil. Why do you say that? Because he's greedy. He likes that every time he sees me, I buy him a present, right? It really runs in my blood. So sell when you can, right? With CrazyEgg, I had someone who was offering us money, and I was foolish and I didn't take it. I was optimistic. I'm like, you know what? Everyone's talking about this company. It's the next big thing. It'll be worth $100 million. Still hasn't happened to this date. So I spent $250,000 of my own money, me and my co-founder, $125 each, to build up CrazyEgg. We were bleeding cash, around $20,000 a month, so $250 plus $20 every single month to keep it going, so $10 each at that time. And we had a verbal buyout offer within like 6 months of launching the company for $6 million. And it was from a really large company with a market cap over $100 billion. But what did I say? Oh no, I'm not gonna sell for you for $6 million. You guys are worth $100 billion. So if you're worth $100 billion, you should pay me at least 10, right? My logic on that was totally flawed. I should have been looking at it as put 250 in. Hey, within 6 months, someone offered me $6 million. I'm stupid if I don't take it, right? But knowing me, I didn't take it because I wanted 10 million just because I'm like, if you're worth 100 billion, 10 million is chump change. It's not even 1%, so you can afford that. Didn't work out. Lessons learned, what goes up must come down, right? You don't need that much money to also be happy. When you think about it, you don't need $6 million to be happy. I live in a condo that's almost paid off. My mortgage is dirt cheap. I eat Subway for breakfast and lunch, sometimes dinner too, right? What's my expenses? I don't have a car. I walk everywhere. I walked here, right? So it's like, you don't need that much money to be happy. If someone's willing you to write a check that changes your lifestyle, take it. Luckily, CrazyEgg's doing well and it's worth more now than it was, that $6 million. But I still made that mistake. Why? Because if I sold it for that $6 million back then, imagine what I could have done with that money, right? That 6 potentially could have turned into a lot more if I invested it right or so forth and so on. Next, frugality is sexy. Not only am I greedy, but I'm really cheap, right? So cheap that I actually even make my girlfriend pay $3 every time she wants to rent a $5 movie on my TV. Like, I really count my money. Like, I make her give me the money first. So it was so funny too. Someone hit me up because they saw that. One of my friends tweeted and they want to put me on a show called Millionaire Douchebags after that. That's a whole different story that. But I learned really quickly from my mom, because I grew up poor, that it's hard to make money. It's easier to save it than it is to make it, which is so true. And when I was a kid, right, I was like cheap, because it's like when you're growing up and your mom's like, oh, we can't afford Taco Bell right now, we got to save a bit more. And it happened to me when I was a kid. We did all right as I was growing up though. I was like, oh crap, got to save up that money. But when I started making money, my life changed, because I was making 6 figures by the time I graduated high school. And I was like, I'm making more than my mom and dad ever made. I'm like, life is good, right? Why ever go to college? I'm like, I'm invincible. So I started to spend a lot of money. I went into a car dealership, Ferrari, Maserati. I tried to buy a Maserati. And I thought I was a hot kid. I had a black American Express credit card like Kanye West. And I'm like, yeah, right? I'm like, I got an African Express credit card like Kanye. So I'm like, where's my Maserati? And the dude's like, what's your credit? I'm like, what's credit? There goes that, right? I couldn't lease a car. That was probably one of the luckiest things that ever happened to me, or else I'd be driving a shitty Maserati that breaks down all the time right now. So I spent also way too much money on building software companies, right? As you saw earlier. Recession hit. I was starting to spread myself thin. And if I had a lot more reserves, I would have done a lot better. Because we have customers paying us, $50,000 to $100,000 a month reoccurring income for SEO services. When someone's paying you $1.2 million a year like a General Motors, an executive looks at that line item, SEO, that's called the WTF line item. What the F is SEO? Which means that even if it's profitable for them, it just gets a big slash and you lost that money, right? So save your money when you can, because it's not going to last forever. So what I learned, save your money. Another important thing is I'm really big on my team. I've worked with some of the same people for 7-8 years, and they go with me from company to company, treat them really well, give them a lot of equity, high wages. I never fire them when there's a downtime. I always figure out something for them. I always cut my wages first. Kissmetrics, when we were struggling, me and my co-founder didn't take salaries for the longest time. It's all about using your own money to make sure your talented employees always are comfortable, because if they're putting in their blood, sweat, and tears for your company, you should be doing the same for them. You also don't want to waste your money on things that don't matter, like a Maserati. And most importantly, there's nothing wrong with having money sit in the bank. I know people are like, oh, that's stupid, interest rates are so low. It's better to have it in the bank than have it nowhere, right? Just make sure it's a good bank that's not like underwater or something, because then it's going to go to zero. So number 9, never take no for an answer. And I'm really good at this. If you tell me no, I'll like jabber away until you say yes now. So just because someone tells you no, it doesn't mean you can't convince them to turn that no into a yes. When I was running CrazyEgg, we pitched 30 VCs, literally 30 VCs. And I was flying from Orange County to San Francisco all the time. I was pitching a little kid, thought I was a shit. They all said no to me. They're like, Neil, your business is like a car tune-up business. It's not a venture-backed business. And I was like, okay. And I kept on telling them like, oh no, you should fund it. I kept on going to the next one. They all said no. They also told us, not only do we have a bad business, but it's going to fail miserably. Funny enough, they're actually wrong. That business is now growing 5% month over month and has 70 to 80% profit margins. But we quit fundraising after that. We shouldn't have, because if we did fundraise that company, it would be much larger right now. So what did I learn from that? No means not right now. When someone tells you no, it doesn't mean that they won't say yes later on. It just means no, right? Just think of it like with your parents. You guys were all kids at one point. When you nag your mom or dad saying like, I want this, they say no. But if you keep on nagging them, they may say yes. So it's like that no could turn into yes. And funny enough, one of the VCs who said no to us for CrazyEgg, they actually said yes to us for Kissmetrics, which is actually what we pitched for CrazyEgg. It's version 2.0, right? We just sucked at pitching, so we didn't understand how to make things clear. It wasn't their fault, it was more so our fault. And the most important thing I learned from this, when someone tells me no, I ask them why. Just say, why not, right? They typically answer it. When an investor says no, hey, you know what? We respect that. We'll love to understand why you're not interested. I just think it'll help me feel free to be as blunt as possible. It won't hurt my feelings. By doing things like that, you actually get a ton of feedback from people and it'll help you improve. Which goes into number 10, the last point before I get into Q&A. Embrace criticism. Have an open mind, right? Don't get offended when people give you advice. Have an open mind. In the end, it's your decision on whatever you want to do, but you should at least hear people out, right? My mom told me I was stupid for investing that $1 million into that company in Texas. She told me when I put in 100 grand. I'm like, Mom, you're stupid. Why should I listen to you? You're a teacher. What do you know about technology, right? She didn't even know how to use a computer. She was right. But I should have listened to her, right? She's like, I don't trust those people. She's like, they don't do anything. I don't see any work out of it, right? Didn't listen to her. So this is the Neil Patel story. Now I get to pick on myself a bit, although I kind of already did in the past. But nonetheless, every time people called me out, I used to get mad. I was a little stubborn kid. And I used to always feel that like people had it out for me, I had to be defensive. And I always felt that, look, what I'm doing is actually right. What you're saying is wrong. You're just here to criticize me because you're jealous of my success. That actually wasn't the reality. The reality is people were actually trying to help me out, but it didn't go through my thick head. So lessons I learned from this, embrace criticism. It just helps you win, right? If someone tells you you're stupid and then they tell you how to fix it, and when they tell you how to fix it, it makes you $1 million, who cares? You can call me stupid all day long as I make $1 million every time you call me stupid, right? So it's like, really embrace the criticism. You can also never stop learning. You'll be shocked on what you can learn from random people, from airline stewardess to priests to your parents to little kids. Someone can always teach you something new in this world. Don't ever think that you know everything, because the reality is you don't, right? I'm 27. I feel like I'm still a little kid and I still have a long way to learn. The other thing that I learned that was really important is you don't want to wait for people to criticize you. I actually love asking people to criticize me. I'm like, so do you have any feedback? Is there anything I could improve upon? Do you see any ways I could improve upon myself? You know how people make New Year's resolutions? One thing that me and my friends do every year is we sit down before we go partying on New Year's and getting drunk, and we give each other one criticism that everyone could improve upon around the table. And there'll be 5 of us, so you'll get 5 different criticism points, and you work on improving them over the next 12 months. The last thing to realize is not all criticism is the same, right? If a serial entrepreneur who's created Groupon gives you criticism on your next version Groupon cologne, you probably want to listen to him to some extent because he has some feedback, versus if a random person on the street gives you criticism and they never use Groupon, right? You want to take both criticisms into account, but you probably want to place more weight on the guy who's actually done it before. So that's pretty much it. You can follow me online. You can read my blog at quicksprout.com. Follow me on Twitter. I'm a Twitter whore. I love my followers, so feel free to follow me. I follow a lot of people back. Company blog, of course. And I think they have my slides, but you can also email me. So any questions? And if you guys don't ask, I will randomly pick one of you guys or multiple of you guys.
How did you keep positive through all that time and not quit?
I kept positive because I don't know how to work for someone else. I really don't, right? Like when you're 16, my first job was 15 and a half and I was picking up trash at Knott's Berry Farm. I was like, crap, anything's better than picking up trash and cleaning restrooms for a living, right? Especially when you're lifting those 50-pound trash bags and it splits all over you multiple times a week. You get tired of that, right? But I kept at it because I know I want to be an entrepreneur. And my big thing is like people a lot of times do what they love. But my parents taught me at a young age, and I'm not saying this is good, they taught me to love money. They're like, Neil, money solves problems. Love it, right? Like, I loved it so much. I put my money inside encyclopedia books until it was like perfectly flat. And then I got screwed because my parents gave away all the encyclopedias one time with all my money. But like, I love money. And that's how I stayed positive, because I was like, I want to be rich. Because I wanted all those things that other people didn't have, or I didn't have as a kid. Because it's like my big dream growing up was I'm like, couldn't afford Taco Bell as a kid, so I'm like, I'm gonna buy that Taco Bell, until I realized how much work it is. But like, money motivated me because it gave me options in life, and I didn't know any other way to get there than being an entrepreneur. If I had to redo it over, I would say the quickest way to make money was being in the financial industry, as you guys can probably already see. Also, probably the quickest way to get broke. But I stayed motivated, just the people around me, encourage each other, make sure you have friends that support you, and just don't give up. Because think of it this way, if you failed once, what's the odds that you're gonna fail 10 times in a row, right? Like, I'm a gambler, so I'm kind of stupid in that sense, but it worked out in my favor to stay motivated. Next question. I used to generate them while I daydream a lot. So I used to generate them while I was in class, high school and college, more than any other time, right? After I graduated from high school and college, my business partner generated most ideas because I sucked at it after that. But I generated based off of that. Another one was pains I experienced. CrazyEgg was a problem we experienced through the marketing agency. Kissmetrics was a company that solved a problem that we experienced with CrazyEgg, right? Like, I'm solving my own problems, and then I find out if other people have these problems too, and if the market's big enough, I would do it. But a lot of people go out there and be like, I want to create a business. And they're like, all right, you want to create a business? What do you want to do? Oh, no, I'm figuring out an idea right now. Don't look for idea. Look for a problem that you can solve. The problem has to be something that you can solve. The solution has to be simple. The solution has to be something that you can do right now. It can't be something that you can solve in 5 years. Has to be affordable to some extent, right? If it's not affordable, it has to actually provide people a lot of value, typically financial value. And last but not least, the solution has to be easy to use or implement. If it's very complicated, companies or consumers probably aren't going to do it. So if your solutions meet those criteria to a problem and the market's big enough where you think enough people will pay for it, you're onto a good business.
When do you think it's time to give up an idea?
I typically give up after a few years. That's actually kind of bad too. I just keep on going at it. At this point I have cash, so I just dump more and more in until I figure it out. But there's a book called The Dip by Seth Godin. It tells you when to stick with it or actually quit. It's worth checking out. It actually breaks down when you should quit. But typically a time that's good at quitting is you can't figure out a way to make the business work and you find better opportunities out there. I usually look at the more opportunities. I won't quit if I can't figure out anything else better to do, but the moment I have something else better to do, and I think it's a long-term play, I'll quit and move on to that. Yeah, you?
You said that you were making quite a good amount of money by the end of high school. I'm just wondering, what kind of experience or education do you have up to end of grade 12 when you go into business and make that much money, which most people would take a long time to make?
Yeah, I got lucky. So I was always a hustler in high school. Like, I was selling black boxes for cable, like hack boxes, to the kids because their parents didn't want to pay for a cable box. I would buy them on eBay and sell them when I started like high school. I also used to sell burned DVDs and movies that are downloaded online. I used to sell car parts. Like I used to do everything. I had a seller's permit from the state so I can buy things at wholesale and sell it to people at, regular price. And I used to do this when I was like 15, 16, 14 and stuff like that. So I always had it in me to try to make money, and I just hustled my way. The thing that really helped me was I was technical. I was like a little geek, right? I got banned from AOL when I was a little kid for hacking and impersonating an AOL user. And when they found out I was a little kid, they just told my parents, you guys are no longer allowed to use AOL, right? They never did anything else. Then that was like when they had the dial-up modems and stuff. But the experience I ended up getting was, because I was hustling when I was a kid, I figured out how to sell really quickly. So when I was in high school, I was a bit of a book nerd as well. I started taking college classes. So I would go to community college because I'm like, I want to graduate college in 2 years. So I started taking them early while I was in high school. So that way, when I graduated, I would have 2 more years left. And what ended up happening was I had a speech class, and I gave a speech on how search engines work. And a dude was from a company called LPAC, and he's like, oh, my boss is looking for this. And there were sales guys in there brushing up on their sales skills, which is why they were in a speech class. The dude gave me a contract for $3,500 a month. I thought I was laughing. I was like making a lot of money as a kid because it was only 10 hours worth of work a month. But then I found out I was bringing 50% of their leads, which is a lot for a company that produces over $50 million in revenue a year. The dude of that company, his son owned an ad agency, and he hooked me up with Blue Cross, Countrywide at that time, so forth, so on. So within a few months of starting, that company wrapped me up to 20 grand a month in revenue with him and his son, and I really had no expenses. So that's how I got my start. But I've always learned how to sell. Like one of my other jobs was Kirby Vacuums. I would go door to door selling vacuums at $1,600 a pop in a neighborhood where homes only cost 300 grand, right? Doesn't make sense, but I still sold vacuums. Like I figured out, I'm like, you're telling me you rather pay for cable TV than worry about the health of your child? Right? Like I did whatever I could to sell. And if they didn't, if they turned me down at the end, I'm like, oh, by the way, would you like me to clean your home? I'll do it for $200, right? Like I had my upsells and everything and different pitches if people said yes or no, right? So like I just hustled my way. Any other questions?
What recommended reads for entrepreneurs, website, resources?
I think there's a great website called clicksroute.com. I would also read Art of the Start by Guy Kawasaki. I think that's a good book. Lean Startup by Eric Ries. The Dip by Seth Godin. My biggest thing that I actually like reading is more so like biographies. Edison just had a biography. I know Elon Musk was talking about that in one of his interviews. That's supposedly pretty good. I would check that out. But the thing that I actually like learning from is either TV or, like I mentioned, biographies. So the History Channel is doing this expose on like how America was built, and it's talking about Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, stuff like that, and they're talking about how they're competing and how they're fighting each other, and they built, businesses back in the day. Like that's the stuff that motivates me. I'm like, yeah, I want to be an oil tycoon, right? But like, watch people. It doesn't matter if a business has been around 200-300 years ago or now. The basic principles of business haven't changed. So what I recommend doing is learn from the people who are really successful, but don't just learn from how they succeeded. Learn from their mistakes. Because if you avoid those mistakes, you'll improve your odds. It's really hard to be like, oh, this is what they did to become successful and replicate that. It's much more easier to be like, oh, these are all the areas that they messed up on and made mistakes. So this is what I need to avoid if I want to be successful. Any other questions? Don't make me pick one of you. I'm about to pick. I'm going to pick the lady right there who's looking down with the red hair or brown hair. What's your name? Jamie, okay. Oh, you're lucky. Someone else said all right, Jamie, what's your question? So I've been at Kissmetrics for 4 years. I probably will see it through. We have great revenue growth. So I think the business will end up being bought by someone. It's just a question of when and when do we want to sell or raise more money. But I think I'll do that for a few more years. You know, next venture, I really don't know what it is. I do a lot every year. Like I probably have extra few ventures that I don't even like think about. I know I have at least 30 because I get 30K ones for my taxes every year, right? I get like a lot. My accounting's a mess. But I'm trying to create this new company. It's a really weird name, and I know this sounds silly, but I'm kind of goofy. What is it called? You Just Got Robbed or something like that, like LLC. And I'm trying to create this company where I buy a lot of rental properties and I rent them out, right? I know that name's really bad, but I just thought it was quirky. And what I'm doing right now, because I have a lot of free cash flow and I hate paying taxes, but we all have to pay them. So I'm trying to buy a lot of real estate, like 2 to 3 homes a year in Orange County, and then rent them out. Another one that I'm doing right now with a buddy is a company that I call the 3-block rule. So around UW and other major colleges in the US, I'm buying up whatever properties that I can get a hold of that have rental disparity, in which the mortgage with the 30% down is less than the rent that's coming in by at least like by 20% a year. So that's my next venture, but I really don't spend much time on it. I just have to write checks to the realtor. Any other questions? All right.
Are you a passive investor in private companies?
I am. I think I'm like in over 20 plus angel investments, probably close to 30 now. But a lot of them are in Seattle too. So.
And you don't play an active role in
I don't have time. But I do help them with marketing. Like I don't even know what some of the ones I've done, like Walk Score. What else is there? I can't even think of some of them. Mimoco, which does like USB devices. There's another one called Julep, who does like a nail parlor salon in Seattle. I invested in that. There's a lot of them. Like after a while, you can't even think of what you invested in. Foodie is another one. It's just like an online food delivery service. But the list just continues. I'm an advisor to a lot of companies as well, like Cheeseburger, I Can Ask Cheeseburger, or Buddy TV, or White Pages, which is here. So, any other questions? On a side note, if you are looking to ever invest your money, it's a very risky game. It's not like the stock market where you can pull out really easily. If you're going to do it for fun. Cool. If you guys have any other things, you can always hit me up as I'm walking down. But hope you guys enjoyed the event. Thank you for sticking around. I know you guys weren't supposed to be here, but thank you for